Joy had always relied on fast food, a habit formed from years of relying on convenience and speed. Growing up in a bustling household, her parents were rarely home due to their work schedules. As the eldest of 5 siblings, Joy often found herself juggling schoolwork and taking care of her younger brothers and sisters. With her mother working long hours and her father rarely around, a professional travel agent on long-haul trips, cooking was never a priority. Meals were mostly bought from street vendors or nearby restaurants. Over time, she grew accustomed to eating out, and it became her routine, regardless of the cost or nutritional value. Her friend Sky, on the other hand, had a completely different upbringing. Sky's family spent time in the kitchen together, preparing homemade meals and cherishing the moments they spent eating together. Sky often urged Joy to try cooking, insisting it would be healthier and more cost-effective.
You'll save so much money and feel so much better,
she would say, always offering to teach Joy the basics of cooking. But Joy always brushed it off, arguing that cooking was too much work.
Why bother when there's food around every corner?
She'd reply with a smile. Sky's concerns only grew as she saw Joy continuing her fast food lifestyle, ignoring the potential benefits of cooking.
You'll regret it one day,
Sky would often say, shaking her head in frustration. But Joy would laugh, convinced that she was perfectly fine. After all, she had been eating out for years without any major problems, so why change now? One evening, after a long day of running errands and managing her brothers, Joy decided to check out a new restaurant that had just opened in her neighborhood. The restaurant, with its sleek modern design and elegant atmosphere, was a welcome change from the usual fast food joints. The place was bustling with energy, and the soft hum of background music combined with the chatter of patrons gave the entire place a sophisticated vibe. Joy felt a rush of excitement as she stepped inside. The staff greeted her with warm smiles, and the scent of freshly prepared dishes wafted through the air.
This is a nice change,
she thought as she sat at a cozy table by the window. Her colleagues had raved about the restaurant, saying the food was mouth-wateringly delicious, and the ambience made it the perfect spot for a quick yet indulgent meal. The menu looked enticing, filled with a mix of exotic dishes and comfort foods. She quickly picked her order and waited eagerly for her meal to arrive. When the food finally came, Joy was impressed. It looked beautiful, everything meticulously plated, vibrant colors popping off the plate. The first bite was heaven, the flavors rich and satisfying, as if each ingredient had been carefully chosen and prepared with love. Joy couldn't help but smile as she ate. The food was not only delicious, but surprisingly affordable.
I could get used to this,
she thought, enjoying the moment. Over the next few weeks, she found herself returning to the restaurant, drawn by the convenience, quality, and affordability. It became a regular spot for her, an easy solution to her busy life. But one evening, as she dug into a steaming plate of pasta, something caught her eye. A tiny speck, which at first seemed like a bit of dirt, caught her attention. She pushed it aside and took another bite. But then, to her horror, she noticed something even worse. As she cut into her meal, a couple of small dead flies lay hidden among the vegetables. Her stomach lurched. She stared in disbelief. Was this for real? Was she seeing things? Her face paled as the nausea began to rise in her throat. She put her fork down and pushed the plate away from her, her appetite completely gone.
This can't be happening,
she muttered under her breath. The smooth texture of the pasta, which had once been so appealing, now seemed repulsive. She stared at the flies, disgusted and horrified. She had always believed this place to be clean, top-notch even, but now she felt betrayed. The waiter, who had been so attentive earlier, seemed to be busy at the other end of the restaurant, unaware of the disaster unfolding at her table. Joy's mind raced as she debated what to do. Should she call the waiter over and confront him? Should she make a scene and risk looking ridiculous, or just let it go? Her stomach churned again, and her face grew hot with embarrassment. But then, in true Joy fashion, she decided to brush it off.
But it's probably just a mistake.
She told herself. After all, she had been eating out for years without any issues, right? She sat there for a moment, trying to push the image of the flies out of her mind. The food had been good. Until it wasn't.
Oh, hell no!
Sighing, she waved down the waiter and explained the situation calmly, though she could barely hide the discomfort in her voice. The waiter, looking shocked and apologetic, promised to make things right. He offered her a new meal, but Joy just wanted to leave. She paid for her meal and left the restaurant with a heavy heart. As she walked out into the cool evening air, Joy couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong.
I've been ignoring all the signs.
She thought, feeling a twinge of regret. Maybe it was time to finally take Sky's advice seriously. Could cooking really be as bad as she had always assumed? But deep down, Joy wasn't entirely convinced. It would take more than one ruined dinner to make her change her ways. And so, she carried on, thinking perhaps it was just a one-time mistake, a hiccup in her otherwise perfectly fine fast food routine. A few days later, after the disastrous incident at the first restaurant, Joy decided to give dining out another try. She convinced herself that the first experience was just an unfortunate accident and that not all restaurants could be like that. So, she found herself walking into a new highly recommended spot, hoping for a fresh start. The place was charming, with soft lighting, comfy chairs, and a cozy atmosphere that made it seem like the perfect place to unwind. The menu had a variety of dishes, and the friendly staff greeted her with enthusiasm. Joy settled into her seat, and soon, her food arrived. It looked just as good as she had imagined, an aromatic plate of jollof rice, accompanied by fried plantain and grilled chicken. The presentation was impeccable, and the dish smelled delicious. She dug in, savoring the flavors. The chicken was tender, the rice perfectly seasoned and slightly spicy, and the fried plantain was chef's kiss. For the first time in days, Joy let herself relax and enjoy the meal, letting go of the worries from her previous experience. As she finished her meal, she felt content, even pleased with her choice.
Maybe I just need to be more selective about where I eat.
She thought. The restaurant seemed clean, the food was fresh, and everything was just as it should be. No signs of anything unusual. Her stomach felt fine, and she even treated herself to a small dessert, a rich chocolate mousse that melted in her mouth. She left the restaurant feeling full and satisfied, convinced that the worst was behind her. However, the next morning, things took a dramatic turn. Joy woke up feeling off, a strange heaviness in her stomach that she couldn't quite shake. She shrugged it off at first, thinking it was just a bit of indigestion. But as the day wore on, the symptoms grew worse. Her stomach churned painfully, cramps twisted her insides, and a fever started creeping in. She tried to ignore it, but by the time the evening came, she was too weak to move, her body trembling with chills. Her friends were concerned when she called them, and Sky insisted on taking her to the hospital. By the time they arrived, Joy was sweating, pale, and barely able to stand on her own. The doctors quickly assessed her and ran a few tests. It didn't take long before they came back with the diagnosis: food poisoning. The doctor explained that the bacteria responsible thrived in unsanitary conditions, and Joy was likely exposed to them at the restaurant she had visited. Her stomach was filled with toxic bacteria, causing the severe cramps, fever, and vomiting. The doctor scolded her gently, explaining how easy it was to fall ill from eating at places that weren't properly maintained.
You have to be more careful, Joy.
The doctor advised.
Many of these restaurants may look clean on the outside, but the kitchen conditions are often far worse. It's important to think about where you eat and to choose places with good hygiene practices. And, if I may suggest, cooking at home might be a healthier and safer option for you.
Joy sat quietly, feeling a wave of shame wash over her. All these years, she had placed her trust in the convenience of eating out, believing that it was easier and quicker. She had never stopped to think about the risks or consequences, always assuming that any restaurant could be trusted. But now, with the doctor's words ringing in her ears, she realized how reckless she had been. As she recovered in the hospital, Joy spent time reflecting on her choices. She knew that she couldn't keep ignoring the advice she had been given. Sky had always been right about the dangers of eating out too much. It wasn't just about the money she was spending, it was her health at risk. She made a promise to herself that when she got better, she would start being more cautious about where she ate. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to give cooking a real shot. A few weeks later, once she was well enough to go out again, Joy decided to pay a visit to the restaurant that had caused her so much pain. She needed answers. Her curiosity and newfound resolve led her to the same spot where it had all started. This time, she wasn't just a customer, she was on a mission. As she walked inside, she immediately began to observe everything with a more critical eye. The dining area was still clean and well-maintained, just as it had been during her previous visit. But Joy wasn't here to check out the front of the house, she needed to see the kitchen. She approached the staff and, with a polite but firm request, asked if she could take a look behind the scenes. The manager hesitated for a moment, but after a few moments of convincing, he led her to the kitchen. What Joy saw shocked her. The kitchen, hidden away from the public's view, was nothing like the pristine dining area. The floors were greasy, and food scraps were scattered around. Raw meat sat uncovered on counters, flies buzzed around, and piles of unwashed dishes were stacked high. A faint smell of decay hung in the air. And, to her horror, she spotted several rats scurrying across the floor, oblivious to the chaos surrounding them. The staff moved about, seemingly unfazed by the filth, and continued with their tasks, as though nothing was wrong. Joy stood frozen, her stomach sinking. She had never imagined that a place she had trusted could be so unsanitary. It was a revelation that she would never forget. She felt a mix of anger and disgust, realizing that all her previous visits had been a gamble with her health. The restaurant may have looked clean and professional on the surface, but what lay behind the scenes was far from safe. It was then that Joy fully understood the importance of being cautious with where she ate and the dire need for food safety. The visit had completely changed her perspective. As she walked away from the restaurant, her mind was made up. She couldn't keep ignoring the risks of eating out, and cooking for herself was no longer an option she could avoid. The lesson had been harsh, but necessary. She knew it was time for a change. Determined to make a change, Joy reached out to Sky for help, and her friend was eager to teach her the basics of cooking. At first, Joy struggled, her meals were far from perfect. But with Sky's guidance, she slowly gained confidence. Cooking, once a daunting task, became a satisfying process. Over time, her dishes improved, and she realized they tasted far better than anything she had ever bought from a restaurant. Her colleagues noticed and began asking for recipes. Joy felt proud of her new skills and healthier lifestyle, and her bond with Sky grew stronger as they shared more cooking tips and experiences. Through her journey, Joy discovered that the changes she made weren't just about food, they were about taking control of her life and embracing growth. So, how often do you prioritize convenience over your health, and what could motivate you to make a change? Also, have you ever experienced a personal transformation that changed the way you viewed things? How did that shift affect you?